If you're just joining us, the voice you're hearing is that of Dr. Ramesh Deosaran, former chairman of the Police Service Commission. Mr. Deosaran, I want to follow, or rather repeat Sharmain's second part of her question, which was the recommendations you mentioned. Are you aware that they are being discussed in the context of the constitutional reform that is necessary?
Well, I would have to call the whole scenario a mystery, because when I first approached the Prime Minister, accompanied by all 4 commissioners, my colleagues, and the presence of the Minister of then Minister of National Security and the Attorney General, and I think 1 or 2 other members of Cabinet, they were very understanding of what the dilemma was. And they themselves felt that this thing should not have been done this way, and there is need for a change. And for over a year, I chaired the committee which they appointed. On that committee, called the Review Committee, with the approval of the Cabinet, you had in it the Minister of National Security, the Minister of Public Administration, the Attorney General, the Chairman of the Law Reform Commission, the Solicitor General, Mr. Ramesh as Chairman of the Social and Welfare Association of the Police. So all the key stakeholders were there, and we developed these recommendations, with, of course, the premise for it and the rationale for the recommendations. And we did submit it to the Prime Minister, to the Attorney General, and I understand it was considered in Cabinet. It was sent to the Finance and General Purposes Committee, which is the implemental arm of the Cabinet. And I think it gained approval. So I remain mystified, in fact, as to if there was such an accommodation and receptiveness. I am asking myself, what is the problem? And when Dr. Rowley on the opposition side say that they're anxious to look after appointing a police commissioner in a different way, that is part of the story. I think they should have a wider understanding of what all the recommendations were in terms of having a proper framework, administrative and legislative, in order to implement that particular decision. So it's not just appointing a commissioner like that. It has to have a proper framework. So on both sides, that's the point I'm trying to make. I think there's a willingness to accommodate the recommendations and to move forward in a more positive and proper way. But so I am mystified to know, well, what is the problem that the thing has been stuck in the mud, as it were? And is there any preparation early on the new agenda, whoever wins the election, to deal with this particular matter?
Okay, that's very, very good, because you're putting it now on the election agenda this morning. That's what you're doing. But at what point were you, because you resigned in frustration from the Police Service Commission, so I'm seeing all these recommendations was put forward and stuff. Was it because that you thought that it wouldn't go anywhere and you just spinning top in mud, as they say? At what point did you resign and give it in?
What happened, when I served my 3 years, I was also a member of the Teaching Service Commission simultaneously, and the work was quite demanding. Almost every day I had to repeat to Port of Spain, for meetings, and I was in charge of doing the regulations for the Teaching Service Commission. So I thought, really, at the end of 3 years, I would perhaps serve my normal term and depart. But when the 3 year ended, we had to appoint Williams. We had to do a number of things in terms of the administration, in terms of the Police Service Commission administration. So, but nobody told me I was going to be reappointed. So when these problems cropped up, I thought to myself, well, I would serve a few months and straighten up these things, and then reconsider my position in the Police Service Commission from that angle. So the president was indicated to the president what the situation was in a very gentle, friendly way. And that was it. But I thought at the same time that the recommendations would have been taken care of even after my departure very quickly. So that is an all wrong context in which Minister I left the Police Service Commission.
I'm sorry.
When we talk about current issues, I just wanted to take it, sorry, Bishop, but I hope that you are going in the same direction. This current issue with the police being embroiled in this cover-up that Jack Warner is alleging that happened at the home of the Prime Minister, when something resembling a plant-like material resembling cannabis was found on the compound. But more importantly was it has embarrassed the police service, because you have the police commissioner saying 2 o'clock in the afternoon there's nothing. Then later on there comes an official statement saying yes, it was a report, and then Special Branch is now giving a report 2 years after the fact. And then there's a deputy commissioner of police, a man who was at the National Operations Center. That's one issue too. And then there's also the issue of politicians being in a position, and they are politicians, they may be the government, but they are the politicians buying out your leave as a police officer. So how does that compromise? And it compromises no place less than the executive of the police service. Help us, Mr. Deosaran, Dr. Deosaran.
Well, I would say the way I look at it now, I think Mr. Williams himself would consider the whole situation unfortunate, especially in terms of the information reaching him. And I think everybody in the country would have wished for a better rate and style of detection and public reporting. Because when you put what's happening now from the police point of view and public confidence, you conjoin this situation with the total policing situation, which tends to worry me, because if you have these incidents happening at the lower level, whether it's inspector, superintendent, senior superintendent, and the executive of the police service, particularly the commissioner and the deputy commissioner who might be in charge of that particular operation, whether it's administration or operations and so on. I am a little surprised that they don't know about these things, because there are serious implications. So we need, and I have always detected that. That is one of the reasons we produced the review team, and that is why I've always said all the Matrosky report and Gibbs and Iwatsky coming down here, those efforts, however genuine they might be, will be of naught if the structure and the manner of reporting within the police service, for example, are not properly put right. So this question about information, things happening that affect the public in this sense of which both issues affect the public, if those things don't have a proper route to reach up to the commissioner, at least for information, I would think there's an organizational deficit there.
The actual foundation of the Police Service Commission you have laid out, that foundation, you also laid out your recommendations. You did touch on the area that is really a sore point, and it juxtapositions what you're talking about now in the context of, if you have a commissioner acting for 3 years, if you have a commissioner who has not been confirmed, there is the question of morale in the service down the line. That, in fact, raises the question of confidence in the leader of the service. And maybe in one way or the other, that it has impact on the need to take everything to the top. Folks believe we can just go about because this is not as structured or as accountable as it should be. Do you share that view at all, that coming from the top of having the commissioner acting for this long period of a time, in fact, is having some resonance in the ranks adversely?
That is another fundamental issue, because we are looking at it so far, at least from my own utterances, from the public point of view. But inside the police service itself, I don't think the officers would feel fully, would have a strong morale and also confidence in the executive. If you have, those people up there, the four of them acting, 6 months after this, another 6 months, of course, that is another internal organizational deficit. So you have Mr. Williams naturally uncomfortable. You have the police service, 7,000 of them, in a state of, having a commissioner that's not substantive enough. And it's important for another related reason, because the new laws in the constitutional amendment gave the police commissioner unprecedented powers over his organization. That is, to use the exact words, he has complete powers to manage the police service.
Yes.
And the word complete became subject to a court adjudication, whether complete means really to spend as you want and so on. And that is what got caught up with Iwatsky and Gibbs of the aeroplane, because they thought they had complete powers, whereas when you look at all the regulations subsidiary to guiding their execution of the powers, they really didn't have the powers to spend over $1 million and so much money. So, and they hired Dana Sitahal to defend them, and then Russell Martino was taken on to explain to Dana, and she agreed that they had really exceeded their powers. So the whole question of the power, that word complete, one of our recommendations to the government was to modify that word complete so it wouldn't misdirect the office holder. So in answer to your question, Rennie, yes, I think it is not good for the police service members themselves to have an acting police commissioner repeatedly appointed as to act. And secondly, the public itself will not have the full confidence for the commissioner to investigate matters fully, especially those with a political tint.
Dr. Ramesh Deosaran, our guest. I just want to follow through on that. Thank you, Sharmain. With one little point, sir. I'm looking at the grading system. Are you hearing me okay?
Mr. Baboolal, I'll have to leave you now. I'm very sorry.
Oh, we have run out of our time. All right.
Okay.
Doctor, thank you so much for taking the time. We would like to invite you to come back with us another time where we can spend a lot more time on that.
Thank you, Sharmain. Thank you very much, Sharmain and Rennie.
Thank you. Have a good day, sir. It is 20 minutes after 10 o'clock in the morning. We're having breakfast. We got a very quick breakfast on Father's Day with the former chairman of the Police Service Commission.
He did say that he was going to be in Mayaro for the weekend, and, that telephone communication was the only thing possible.
Yes, because one of the areas, Sharmain, that I am disquieted by is, I was about to ask you this, the rating scale for the commissioner goes as follows: poor, unsatisfactory, fair, satisfactory, good, very good, and excellent. Now that's, that's the scale. And what bothers me here is that the commissioner who resigned, he got what was called he got a fair grade. Now, fair grade is one step above satisfactory. And not to impugn the integrity or ability of the acting commissioner right now, I wondered if somewhere in the ranks there's a question of the man who got satisfactory one step below fair being appointed as the acting commissioner, if in fact that has any resonance at all in the ranks. You think that is a possibility, or you think folks are not paying attention to this criteria?
Well, it's still a lot of questions unanswered, and which is where I was going to go with Dr. Deosaran. And when he comes back to us, we'll ask, because he was the chairman of the team that assessed Mr. Gibbs, Dr. Gibbs, Commissioner Dwayne Gibbs. And quite the only thing that most of us had going, most of us, I put myself out there, and most people had against Dr. Gibbs was that he was not Trinidadian. Mm-hmm. But he was making, from all appearances, an effort to change some fundamentals in the police service, bringing operational issues, dealing with operational issues in terms of management and all that stuff. And he would have found himself being this first world professional cop coming out of Canada, would have found himself within getting blocks all around him.
The so-called line minister, I am reading, said that he found the former police commissioner disrespectful in the way he dealt with the commission, and that was one of the levels where he found it untenable or unsustainable for him to hold that position. But that from you, I have received a lot of information. A lot of folks have equally said that given the time, he was doing a good job.
Yeah, he seemed, well, if you look at it, there was no immediate improvement in terms of crime, and I think that we are all basically being hyped up to think that if you have a reduction in the murder rate or reduction in the number of serious crimes, that we have addressed issues that are fundamental to fighting crime, which is essentially the police service. So now also what's coming out now about the allegations from Mr. Warner about an alleged cover-up was due to come out for a long time, because these are things that have been happening for decades in the country. People cover up, and crime is almost endemic to the TT Police Service, as we found, and that is not that's not a wild allegation or loose cannon talking there. That's what we found, and that's what we know by investigation, by commissions of inquiry, and all of that.